White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham is our headliner and joins us now from Washington. And Stephanie, welcome back to our program here, and a good morning to you. Well, what is, among the conversations at the White House, what is the expected response, the anticipated response on behalf of Iran?
That's not something that we would know about, but we're definitely ready for it. If they choose to retaliate, the president has made clear that we will be ready for that. Our military is, of course, on high alert, and we'll just see what happens. We hope it doesn't happen. The president has said he does not seek any kind of an escalation or war, but again, we'll see what happens.
Can you specify the threats that Soleimani posed against American forces?
No, that's something. It was an intel-based decision, and it saved American lives. And I think that that's what's most important. I know a lot of people are now questioning the intel. That's really unfortunate. A lot of people are saying, to what benefit? And I will answer that question. The benefit was we saved American lives. We saved members of the military, we saved diplomats, and we saved a lot of families from having to, welcome their loved ones home in coffins.
How long will you keep it private?
That is not up to me. The members of Congress are being briefed tomorrow, so they'll get to see that. I imagine some of those details will leak, but again, there's intel that just can't be made public because it's as safety for national security.
Obviously, the coming minutes, hours, days, everything matters when it comes to the president's next decision with all of this. What does his schedule look like? Who is he meeting with, and how is he coming up with his next move?
Well, he's being briefed all of the time. He's talking to his national security team all of the time. He's also, continuing on with the job of the president. He's going to meet with the Greek prime minister today, and he's got other things that he needs to be doing. But he's being briefed constantly. He is on top of everything. And, the country should feel good that this president is not going to let anything happen to anybody.
Many Republicans, I would say, have supported the move, with one exception. That's Rand Paul. Last hour, he told us diplomacy, the possibility of it, is now dead. To him, you say what?
I don't know if I agree with that. The president has said that Iran, if he's welcome to talking to them with no preconditions. And I did see him speak, and I would say that, again, we saved American lives. There is nothing that we could have done. The alternative was to, not save these people? And then what would people be saying to us? What would Congress be saying? What would Nancy Pelosi be saying? That we sat by and let something happen to our American troops or our American diplomats. Again, we saved lives here, and that was the number one most important thing to this president.
I know you're not going to go very far on this, but I'm going to try and push you yet again. Was there a deliberate decision to kill him when he was in Iraq? Or would you have made the same decision had he been in Damascus or even Tehran?
I will just say exactly what the president has said, is that we caught him red-handed. We caught him in the act. It was a targeted strike that eliminated the number one terrorist in this world, and countless lives have been saved, not only by catching him in the act for what he was going to do, but who knows what he was going to do in the future. He was not going to stop targeting Americans.
But were you waiting for him to come back into Baghdad?
That's not something I'm going to get into.
How is the president responding behind closed doors to some Democrats suggesting that the president made this move to distract from impeachment?
It's not surprising, but he's staying focused. Look, the Democrats are not going to be happy with anything that we do, absolutely anything. They should be celebrating that this president took such decisive action to save their Americans, many of whom they represent. But again, there's nothing that this president can do that will make them happy. And it's really unfortunate that they're turning this political. This is not political. This is not a game. This was about American lives.
What is the president's biggest concern when he weighs his next move?
Well, of course, collateral damage and people being injured. He's going to have to keep that in mind. I mean, the president has such difficult decisions to make on a daily basis. And for 3 years now, he's been very, very careful, which I think should show that this was an imminent danger to some Americans. That is why he acted so decisively. He's very, very careful and very thoughtful, and he weighs all of his options very carefully based on intel and based on what his national security team tells him.
Stephanie, what do you say to American men and women serving overseas as to what they should brace for, and what direction have you given them?
What we say to them is thank you. As always, we say thank you for their bravery and thank you for serving this country. And we have every confidence in them. We've got the best military in this world. We've got the best soldiers. All 5 branches of the military are fantastic. They're brave. We thank them for what it is that they do every single day.
You know, the president expressed with Rush Limbaugh in a new interview that there was knowledge of this behavior and intelligence that would have rendered doing this sooner, even in past administrations. What is he saying about that?
Yes, I mean, President Obama designated him a terrorist, and then nothing was done. In fact, he just sent him cash. There probably were missed opportunities, but there's really no need to look in the past. We're looking ahead. We're looking at what we're doing in this administration. The president is focused on what he's doing now. And again, he took decisive action, and there was a targeted strike that took out a very, very bad man, a murderer, somebody who targeted Americans constantly, had many, many plans to kill Americans.
Let's move from Iran to impeachment. Nancy Pelosi sent out this tweet yesterday saying the president and Senator McConnell have run out of excuses. They must allow key witnesses to testify and produce the documents Trump has blocked so Americans can see the facts for themselves. The Senate cannot be complicit in the president's cover-up, hashtag defend our democracy. What is the expectation now that John Bolton said yesterday he would respond to a subpoena and testify in a Senate trial if it comes to that?
Well, first of all, the articles of impeachment haven't been sent to the Senate yet, so we can't even start talking about who or if people will testify, if John Bolton or anybody else will be a witness. I'll tell you the irony here. One of the articles of impeachment is obstruction of Congress. I would argue that Nancy Pelosi is obstructing Congress right now because she's not sending the articles over.